Hey, 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 you know what time it is. Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! We are back! We are back! We are back! Ooh, the vocals. Hello, lovelies. We're back with Storytime with Chris. As I always say, you do not have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max relax and chillaxing time, in between time, meantime, scheming time, study time, break time, CP time, any time that you have time to hear a highly animated voice bring you wonderful stories of magic, fantasy, science fiction, adventure, and many, many more in between. I'm back, y'all. I had to take days off because I was having issues with my mic. So let me explain. For some reason, when I would plug in to speak, it wouldn't pick up the sound. And when I would try to test a video, because I always try to test before I actually go live, it just sounded very broken up and gargly. So I thought I was going to have to buy a brand new mic. Thankfully, my friend Terrence is really good at repairing radio equipment and mics and stereo equipment and stuff like that. So I was able to get it fixed, and so now the wiring in it is fixed to where it's not short anymore. So now I can be able to come back and do story time and give you full, clear audio realness. Or ASMR, which I probably will never do. And yes, let me explain a couple of things about my hair. First of all, always team natural all day. Let's establish that. We celebrate natural hair in this house. From every walk of life, we celebrate natural hair. It's beautiful. Now, if you want to wear wigs, weave, and extensions and stuff like that, you are welcome to do so. But for those of us who wish to wear our natural hair in all of its multiplicitous forms, we celebrate that. So I washed my hair today. I haven't gotten a retwist since the week before the beginning of August because I had to go up to Cleveland for my sister's wedding and got my hair done before I went. And I haven't gotten it retwisted since then. Let me make something very clear. I love my dreadlocks. I call them dreadlocks. That is what I call them. I know there are others in my community that would prefer locks, twist. And to me, the term dreadlock is not a negative term for me. I've reclaimed it, as of others who have reclaimed it as a positive term. Because, truth be told, I don't have to prescribe to anybody's European beauty standards. You don't have to prescribe to anybody's standards. You can do and style yourself in the way that you feel is good for you. Of course, keep it appropriate and age appropriate, but make your style unique to yourself. Unique, okay? And right now my hair has been washed, and so it's drying, and I put it up in an updo and giving very much 90s Busta Rhyme, Nikki Giovanni, 90s realness, Afrocentric realness. I'm loving it. And I didn't think I was going to be able to make this look good, but I'm feeling it for the time being, because this is going to come down later on tonight once it's stopped drying. So, just wanted to explain that, because I know somebody's going to make a comment. So, let me tell you, I love my hair. I love my look. And I show this to you all because I want you all to realize that you are beautiful in your own way, no matter what hair you have, no matter if you have freckles or vitiligo or a big birthmark or a mole. Like I have a mole on my nose and under my chin. Shout out to my grandmother on my mother's side. And no matter what you look like, if you're tall, short, a little stocky, or anything, you are beautiful the way you are, and nobody can tell you otherwise. And be proud of that. Be happy about that, because people try to put other people down because they're intimidated by their joy. Go celebrate your joy. Go have a good time. Dress and be however you wish to be. As long as it makes you happy, as long as you're not harming other people in the process, do that. Go do that. I mean that most sincerely. So we're back with Charlotte's Web. We are about to get to the end of this. And so, oh, hey! But We're about to get to the end of this. I think we only have like a few chapters left. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and begin, okay? Okay. Yep, we're getting to the part that's going to be very hard for me, but that's okay. That's okay, because we're going to get through this, and you'll understand why. So, just hang out with me for a little bit. Gotcha. I think that'll be a good spot. Ooh, let me get my glasses on. Hold on. Okay. Chapter 18. The Cool of the Evening. In the cool of the evening, when shadows darkened the fairgrounds, Templeton crept from the crate and looked around. Wilbur lay asleep in the straw. Charlotte was building a web. Templeton's keen nose detected many fine smells in the air. The rat was hungry and thirsty. He decided to go exploring. Without saying anything to anybody, he started off. "Bring me back a word," Charlotte called after him. "I shall be writing tonight. For the last time." The rat mumbled something to himself and disappeared into the shadows. He did not like being treated like a messenger boy. After the heat of the day, the evening came as a welcome relief to all. The Ferris wheel was lighted now. It went round and round in the sky and seemed twice as high as by day. There were lights on the midway, and you could hear the crackle of the gambling machines and the music of the merry-go-round and the voice of the man in the Beano booth calling numbers. The children felt refreshed after their nap. Fern met her friend Henry Fussy, and he invited her to ride with her in the Ferris wheel. He even bought a ticket for her, so it didn't cost her anything, which is always very polite and very helpful. When Mrs. Arable happened to look up into the starry sky and saw her little daughter sitting with Henry Fussy and going higher and higher into the air, and saw how happy Fern looked, she just shook her head. My, she said, "Henry Fussy, think of that." Templeton kept out of sight. In the tall grass behind the cattle barn, he found a folded newspaper. Inside it were leftovers from somebody's lunch, a deviled ham sandwich, a piece of Swiss cheese, part of a hard-boiled egg, and a core of a wormy apple. The rat crawled in and ate everything. Then he tore a word out of the paper, rolled it up, and started back to Wilbur's pen. Charlotte had her web almost finished when Templeton returned, carrying the newspaper clipping. She had left a space in the middle of the web. At this rate, no people were around the pig pen, so the rat and the spider and the pig were by themselves. "I hope you brought a good one," Charlotte said. "It's the last word I shall ever write." "Here," said Templeton, unrolling the paper. "What does it say?" asked Charlotte. "You'll have to read it for me." "It says humble," replied the rat. "Humble," said Charlotte. "Humble has two meanings. It means not proud, and it means near the ground. That's Wilbur all over. He's not proud, and he's near the ground." "Well, I hope you're satisfied," sneered the rat. "I'm not going to spend all my time fetching and carrying. I came to this fair to enjoy myself, not to deliver papers." "You've been very helpful," Charlotte said. "Run along if you want to see more of the fair." The rat grinned. "I'm going to make a night of it," he said. "That old sheep was right. This fair is a rat's paradise. What eating! And what drinking, and every good hiding and good hunting. Bye-bye, my humble Wilbur. Fare thee well, Charlotte, you old schemer. This will be a night to remember in a rat's life." He vanished into the shadows. Charlotte went back to her work. It was quite dark now. In the distance, fireworks began going off, rockets scattering fiery balls in the sky. By the time the Arables and the Zuckermans and Lurvy returned from the grandstand, Charlotte had finished her web. The word humble was woven neatly in the corner. Hold on for a second. I'm trying not to get emotional because, kids, you got to bear with me. I love this book. My Aunt Diane read it to me when I was 7 years old. I read it by myself at 8. And it changed my life. And there is a part, unfortunately, that's coming up that's a bit sad. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but just bear with me. If I cry or get emotional, just know it's nothing against y'all. I love this story. I absolutely love this story. So I just wanted to say that, okay? Fern and Avery climbed into the truck and lay down. They pulled the blanket over them. Lurvy gave Wilbur a forkful of fresh straw. Mr. Arable patted him. Time for us to go home, he said to the pig. See you tomorrow. The grown-ups climbed slowly into the truck, and Wilbur heard the engine start and then heard the truck moving away in low speed. He would have felt lonely and homesick had Charlotte not been with him. He never felt lonely when she was near. In the distance, he could hear the music of the merry-go-round, and as he was dropping off to sleep, he spoke to Charlotte. "Sing me that song again about the dung in the dark," he begged. "Not tonight," she said in a low voice. "I'm too tired." Her voice didn't seem to come from her web. "Where are you?" asked Wilbur. "I can't see you. Are you on your web?" "I'm back here," she answered, "up in this back corner." "Why aren't you on your web?" asked Wilbur. "You almost never leave your web." "I've left it tonight," she said. Wilbur closed his eyes. "Charlotte," he said, after a while, "do you really think Zuckerman will let me live and not kill me when the cold weather comes? Do you really think so?" "Of course," said Charlotte. "You are a famous pig, and you are a good pig. Tomorrow, you'll probably win a prize. The whole world will hear about you. Zuckerman will be proud and happy to own such a pig. You have nothing to fear, Wilbur. Nothing to worry about. Maybe you'll live forever. Who knows? And now, go to sleep." For a while there was no sound. Then Wilbur's voice. "What are you doing up there, Charlotte?" "Oh, making something," she said. "Making something as usual." "Is it something for me?" asked Wilbur. "No," said Charlotte. "It's something for me for a change." "Please tell me what it is," begged Wilbur. "I'll tell you in the morning," she said. "When the first light comes into the sky, and the sparrows stir and the cows rattle their chains, when the rooster crows and the stars fade, when early cars whisper along the highway, you'll look up here, and I'll show you something. I will show you my masterpiece." Before she finished the sentence, Wilbur was asleep. She could tell by the sound of his breathing that he was sleeping peacefully, deep in the straw. Miles away at the arable's house, the men sat down at the kitchen table eating a dish of canned peaches and talking over the events of the day. Upstairs, Avery was already in bed and asleep. Mrs. Arable was tucking Vern into bed. "Did you have a good time at the fair?" she asked as she kissed her daughter. Fern nodded. "I had the best time I have ever had anywhere or any time in all my whole life." "Well," said Mrs. Arable, "isn't that nice?" Oh, jeez. Sorry, y'all. I do apologize. Oh, jeez. Oh, goodness. Chapter 19. The Egg Sack. Next morning, when the first light came into the sky, and the sparrows stirred in the trees, when the cows rattled their chains, and the rooster crowed, and the early automobiles went whispering along the road, Wilbur awoke and looked for Charlotte. He saw her up overhead in a corner near the back of his pen. She was very quiet. Her 8 legs were spread wide. She seemed to have shrunk during the night. Next to her, attached to the ceiling, Wilbur saw a curious object. It was a sort of sack, or cocoon. It was peach-colored and looked as though it were made of cotton candy. There she is. "Are you awake, Charlotte?" he said softly. "Yes," came the answer. "What is that nifty little thing? Did you make it?" "I did indeed," replied Charlotte in a weak voice. "Is it a plaything?" "Plaything? I should say not. It is my egg sack, my magnum opus." "I don't know what a magnum opus is," said Wilbur. "That's Latin," explained Charlotte. "It means great work. This sack is my great work. The finest thing I have ever made." "What's inside it?" said Wilbur. "Eggs?" 514 of them," she replied. 514? said Wilbur. "You're kidding." "No, I'm not. I counted them. I got started
counting, so I kept on just to keep my mind occupied.
It's a beautiful egg sack, said Wilbur, feeling as happy as though he had constructed it himself.
Yes, it is pretty, replied Charlotte, patting the sack with her 2 front legs. Anyway, I can guarantee that it is strong. It's made out of the toughest material I have, and it's also waterproof. The eggs are inside and will be warm and dry.
Charlotte, said Wilbur dreamily, are you really going to have 514 kids?
If nothing happens, yes, she said. Of course they won't show up till next spring.
Wilbur noticed that Charlotte's voice sounded sad. What makes you sound so darn downhearted? I should think you'd be terribly happy about this.
Oh, don't pay any attention to me, said Charlotte. I just don't have much pep anymore. I guess I feel sad because I won't ever see my children.
What do you mean you won't see your children? Of course you will. We'll all see them. It's going to be simply wonderful next spring in the barn cellar with 514 baby spiders running around all over the place, and the geese will have a new set of goslings, and the sheep will have their new lambs.
Maybe, said Charlotte quietly. However, I have a feeling I'm not going to see the results of last night's efforts. I don't feel good at all. I think I'm languishing, to tell you the truth.
Wilbur didn't understand the word languish, and he hated to bother Charlotte by asking her to explain, but he was so worried he felt he had to ask. What does languishing mean?
It means I'm used up. I'm slowing up, feeling my age. I'm not young anymore, Wilbur. But I don't want you to worry about me. This is your big day. Look at my web. Doesn't it show up well with the dew on it?
Charlotte's web never looked more beautiful than it looked this morning. Each strand held dozens of bright drops of early morning dew. The light from the east struck it and made it all plain and clear. It was a perfect piece of designing and building. In another hour or two, a steady stream of people would pass by, admiring it and reading it, and looking at Wilbur and marveling at the miracle. As Wilbur was studying the web, a pair of whiskers and a sharp face appeared. Slowly, Templeton dragged himself across the pen and threw himself down in a corner. "I'm back," he said in a husky voice. "What a night!" The rat was swollen to twice his normal size. His stomach was as big around as a jelly jar. And kids, this is a perfect example of eating for the sake of eating. He was not even hungry. He just wanted to eat food. And that was a fat rat. "What a night," he repeated hoarsely. "What feasting and carousing, a real gorge. I must have eaten the remains of 30 lunches. Never have I seen such leavings, and everything well ripened and seasoned with the passage of time and the heat of the day. Oh, it was rich, my friends, rich."
You ought to be ashamed of yourself, said Charlotte in disgust. It would serve you right if you had an acute attack of indigestion.
Excuse me.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself, said Charlotte in disgust. It would serve you right if you had an acute attack of indigestion.
"Don't worry about my stomach," snarled Templeton. "It can handle anything. And by the way, I've got some bad news. As I came past that big pig next door, the one that calls himself Uncle, I noticed a blue tag on the front of his pen. That means he's won first prize. I guess you're licked, Wilbur. You might as well relax. Nobody's gonna hang any medal on you. Furthermore, I wouldn't be surprised if Zuckerman changes his mind about you. Wait till he gets hankering for some fresh pork and smoked ham and crisp bacon. He'll take the knife to you, my boy."
Be still, Templeton, said Charlotte. You're too stuffed and bloated to know what you're saying. Don't pay any attention to him, Wilbur.
Wilbur tried not to think about what the rat had just said. He decided to change the subject. "Templeton," said Wilbur, "if you weren't so dopey, you wouldn't have noticed that Charlotte has made an exac. She's going to become a mother.
For your information, there are 514 eggs in that peachy little sack.
Is this true?
Asked the rat, eyeing the sack suspiciously. Yes, it is, sighed Charlotte.
Congratulations, murmured Templeton. This has been a night.
He closed his eyes, pulled some straw over himself, and dropped off into a deep sleep. Wilbur and Charlotte were glad to be rid of him for a while. At 9 o'clock, Mr. Arable's truck rolled into the fairgrounds and came to a stop at Wilbur's pen. Everybody climbed out. "Look!" cried Fern. "Look at Charlotte's Web! Look what it says!" The grown-ups and the children joined hands and stood there studying the new sign.
Humble, said Mr. Zuckerman. Now isn't that just the word for Wilbur?
Everyone rejoiced to find that the miracle of the web had been repeated. Wilbur gazed up lovingly into their faces. He looked very humble and very grateful. Fern winked at Charlotte. Lurvy soon got busy. He poured a bucket of warm slops into the trough, and while Wilbur ate his breakfast, Lurvy scratched him gently with his smooth stick. "Wait a minute," cried Avery. "Look at this!" He pointed to the blue tack on Uncle's pen. "This pig has won first prize already!" The Zuckermans and the Arable stood and stared at the tag. Mrs. Zuckerman began to cry. Nobody said a word. They just stared at the tag. Then they stared at Uncle. Then they stared at the tag again. Lurvy took out an enormous handkerchief and blew his nose very loud. So loud, in fact, that the noise was heard by stable boys and over at the horse barn. "Can I have some money?" asked Fern. "I want to go out on the Medway." "You stay right there where you are," said her mother. Tears came to Fern's eyes.
"What's everybody crying about?" asked Mr. Zuckerman. "Let's get busy. Edith, bring that buttermilk."
Mrs. Zuckerman wiped her eyes with her handkerchief. She went to the truck and came back with a gallon jar of buttermilk.
"Bath time," said
Zuckerman cheerfully. He and Mrs. Zuckerman and Avery climbed into Wilbur's pen. Avery slowly poured buttermilk on Wilbur's head and back. As it trickled down his sides and cheeks, Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman rubbed into his hair and skin. Passers-by stopped to watch. Pretty soon, quite a crowd had gathered. Wilbur grew beautifully white and smooth. The morning sun shone through his pink ears. "He isn't as big as the pig next door," remarked one bystander, "but he's cleaner. That's what I like."
"So do I,"
said another man. "He's humble, too," said a woman reading the sign on the web. Everybody who visited the pigpen had a good word to say about Wilbur. Everyone admired the web, and of course nobody noticed Charlotte. Suddenly a voice was heard on the loudspeaker.
"Attention, please. Will Mr. Homer Zuckerman bring his famous pig to the judge's booth in front of the grandstand? A special award will be made there in 20 minutes. Everyone is invited to attend. Crate your pig, please, Mr. Zuckerman, and report to the judge's booth promptly."
For a moment after this announcement, the Arables and the Zuckermans were unable to speak or move. Then Avery picked up a handful of straw and threw it high in the air and gave a loud yell. The straw fluttered down like confetti in Fern's hair. Mr. Zuckerman hugged Mrs. Zuckerman. Mr. Arable kissed Mrs. Arable. Avery kissed Wilbur. Lurvy shook hands with everybody. Fern hugged her mother. Avery hugged Fern. Mrs. Arable hugged Mrs. Zuckerman. Up overhead, in the shadows of the ceiling, Charlotte crouched unseen, her front legs encircling her egg sack. Her heart was not beating as strongly as usual, and she felt weary and old, but she was sure at last that she had saved Wilbur's life, and she felt peaceful and contented.
"We have no time to lose," shouted Mr. Zuckerman. "Lurvy, help with the crate."
"Can I have some money?" asked Fern. "You wait," said Mrs. Arable. "Can't you see everybody's busy?" Yes, everybody celebrate. We are happy about this.
"Put that empty buttermilk jar into the truck,"
commanded Mr. Arable. Avery grabbed the jar and rushed to the truck. "Does my hair look all right?" asked Mrs. Zuckerman. "Looks fine," snapped Mr. Zuckerman, as he and Lurvy set the crate down in front of Wilbur. "You didn't even look at my hair," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "You're all right, Edith," said Mrs. Arable. "Just keep calm." Templeton, asleep in the straw, heard the commotion and awoke. He didn't know exactly what was going on, but when he saw the men shoving Wilbur into the grate, he made up his mind to go along. He watched his chance, and when no one was looking, he crept into the grate and buried himself in the straw at the bottom.
"All ready, boys!"
cried Mr. Zuckerman.
"Let's go!"
Ooh, excuse me. He and Mr. Arable and Lurvy and Avery grabbed the crate and boosted it over the side and up into the truck. Fern jumped aboard and sat on top of the crate. She still had straw in her hair and looked very pretty and excited. Mr. Arable started the motor, everyone climbed in, and off they drove to the judge's booth in front of the grandstand. As they passed the Ferris wheel, Fern gazed up at it and wished she were in the topmost car with Henry Fussy at her side. How very special are we for just a moment to be part of life's eternal rhyme. How very special are we to have on our family tree Mother Earth and Father Time. He turns the seasons around, and so she changes her gown. But they always look in their prime. They go on dancing their dance of everlasting romance. Mother Earth and Father Time. The summer larks return to sing. Oh, what a gift they give when autumn days are short and cold. Oh, what a joy to live. How very special are we for just a moment to be part of life's eternal rhyme. How very special are we to have on our family tree Mother Earth and Father Time. I sing that song because it's one of my favorite songs from the original film of Charlotte's Web, which was an animated film created by Hanna-Barbera, which, if you recognize that name, that's basically the company and duo that created Scooby-Doo, Josie and the Pussycats, Jabberjaws, Dastardly and Muttley, Penelope Pitstop, Wacky Races, the Flintstones, the Jetsons. They made an animated movie of Charlotte's Web because it was so popular back in the mid 70s, and it stood the test of time. I actually prefer it more than the live action film. And that song is a song that Charlotte sings, and I sing that song because it's going to be very important for next time we meet next Sunday. I love you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.